What is going on, Movie Meals? Movie Meals. It's been a week, but we're here to review Challengers Late. We got busy this week. We also both have been off and on sick again, which is just wonderful. So yeah, but we saw Challengers. We're here to review it, and we also for the podcast this week, which will be up on Monday. We are going to do a re-review. That whole episode is going to be a conversation about another movie by how do you say his name? Luca. How do you say it?
Guadagnino.
We're going to re-review maybe our most hated review in Call Me by Your Name. So check that out on Monday. So let's get into it, Kyle. What were your, I guess before we get into that thing, my patrons, Kimberly and Karen, go get some merch. So I'll link down in the description. I don't have the hoodie with me, but when we cross that 2,000 mark, we're going to give a free hoodie away to somebody who's been liking, subscribing, sharing, and leaving comments. We see you. I was just responding to a bunch of them. So we appreciate you guys. Got new digs today. We went with the old Rebels baseball jersey. Bought that yesterday. A little Skywalker 77 action here.
Oh, that's cool.
Brand new. Filming this on Revenge of the 5th. Hope you all had a great May 4th, and may the 4th be with you. So let's get into it here, Kyle. What were your positives of Challengers?
The positive for me, the biggest being, is the direction of this movie through Luca Guadagnino and his cinematographer, because I think there's a lot of things at play when it comes to Challengers, this story being about a group of professional tennis players that not only are competitive within each other professionally, but also competitive within each other sexually, with their love triangle that you see, how it got started and how it blossoms over time. And I think the direction both does a really good job at the sensualness and the sexual chemistry and tension, not just in terms of the more intimate moments of the story, but also just the almost intimate moments of the sport that they love, the sport of tennis. And I saw a quote that was interesting from the director, that he's not a fan of the sport of tennis, but yet he still directed this story. And I found that really cool, because for me, I thought he did make the tennis aspects of the story really fun to watch. I thought there was some creative action shots that he was doing to make the tennis matches like really exhilarating through the viewer. But at the same time, I also thought it kind of was playful in acting as if it's like the sexual frustration between all of the characters, like that competitive edge that they have, as I was saying, in both their love triangle, but also with each other competitively through the sport. So on top of that, I thought the acting between Zendaya, Mike Faist, and Josh O'Connor are terrific young blossoming actors, especially especially just seeing Zendaya and Mike Faist having their coming up, and Josh O'Connor is probably the one actor that I'm not too familiar with, but I've liked what I've seen out of him. But I just thought that they had all of their characters were just gross and I don't know, smarmy, maybe that's not the right word for it, but they just have such underlying elements of despicableness, but yet underlying elements of reasons to kind of root for them or kind of care for them. Just really complex characters that aren't beloved, but you can't help but just be watching them just to see how everything plays out. So just some great tension through the acting and through the direction with all three of those characters. I just thought that between those elements and the score just being a lot of fun to listen to while you're in the heat of the moment within all the characters, just really great direction overall, just for making this story not just completely about showcasing like them doing sexual acts, but just showcasing them holding back from like what they truly feel, or like what they truly are trying to get out of their different relationships and conflicts. So yeah, just a really fun, entertaining movie. I guess fun isn't the right word, but there was just a lot of back and forth, a lot of heated nature of this movie that just makes you sit and think on what you saw, because there was just a lot of great scenes just to look back on. So I had a blast with the movie.
Yeah, a lot of sex in the movie, and yet no sex in the movie. It's a wild thing. I really enjoyed this. I think this is I've been lukewarm on Luca as a director here. I will talk about Call Me by Your Name uh, tomorrow, so check that out. I'm not even going to
Mm,
touch on that because I want to save it for that video. But I
yeah.
liked Bones and All. I didn't love it. I thought it was pretty good.
Mm,
But here I think he really does shine as a director, and I agree with Kyle. I think there's a lot of really good things in this movie. Some of the cinematography is excellent. There's a shot that I know he's talked about that he wanted to do in his what's it called, Suspiria, I think.
mm,
Um, that he wanted to do a similar style shot and he wasn't able to, so he made sure to do it for this, involving looking up. I mean, I guess minor spoiler, but looking up at the court from underground. Which is also
oh yeah.
just, you got to be an anime guy at that point because that's been a shot in Naruto for a couple years now, pal. Okay, elite shot in that big moment in that. But I loved that. I loved most of the cinematography. We'll get into the negatives, but there's a
Excuse
couple
me.
shot choices I wasn't a fan of. But
Mm,
I thought this movie came down to the performances. It is Zendaya at she's really just on. I think it's unfair to say this is Zendaya at her best because I think right now we're just seeing Zendaya flatline at the best because I think she's just as good in Dune, and then 2 months later, boom, we get her in Challengers, and I think she's phenomenal in both. So I think we're just seeing her have her own reconnaissance, if you will, a Zendaya sans. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's just her being triumphant. So yeah, Mike, he's a standout in West Side Story from a couple years
Yeah.
ago by Spielberg. I hadn't seen what's his name again,
Josh
Josh.
O'Connor.
I hadn't really
Mm,
seen him in much. I know he was on a couple shows. I think it was The Crown. Yeah, The Crown, that was really popular.
mm,
Emma had its nice little run there. He was in some Les Mis TV, but I
mm,
thought he was very good too. I thought the two lead guys are rising stars, and they did a
yeah.
fantastic job here on a movie that um, uses sport and sexual identity to kind of all weave itself together. It leaves a lot open to interpretation. I know he took
Yeah.
inspiration for this story from Roger Federer's real wife and how stressed she looked once watching him in I think a Wimbledon championship match. I
That's
know the
cool.
quote, he was like she's so stressed and she's like a multimillionaire with like 20 houses, and like why is she so stressed? And I know that I
Mm,
think I think Roger Federer's wife got injured in a similar way, and so it inspired the story. And I think this is a very, very good film. It was really, really fun. Interesting that it is coming out this early in the year, and we'll see if it's able to compete for an Oscar. I mean, I keep hearing, oh, that lock the Oscar, lock the Oscar. My boy, we were in May. What are we just got in May? We have months and months. People forget about the movies in May. Look at Air from last year.
yeah,
So
I was gonna
hopefully,
say.
hopefully, if it's a weaker
Mm,
year and nothing is better, then I hope Challengers remains in the zeitgeist as well as like a movie like Dune. But we'll see. So yeah, Kyle, what were your negatives?
I guess the one thing to start off with is that I don't think the runtime was really deserving of it being as long as it was. Not that the movie wasn't paced too poorly, but I did at the same time feel like the movie kind of drug on at points, or I felt like despite like its fast style of telling the story, that like it just didn't warrant the felt like what was it? Was it not like 2.5 hours, something like that? I just felt like something along the way could have helped to cut it down and not make that story feel
2:11.
as elongated. Okay, but I feel like that still could have been cut down pretty well anyway. Um, I was going back and forth on whether I wanted there to be more uh showing of sex. Like this movie really does hold back from showing like a lot of sex scenes. It just shows more of like um I guess like the act of lawning or the act of like um passionate gazing, I guess, whatever you want to call it. But I did wonder if like maybe I would have wanted a sex scene or two just to like really help with like the heat of like what this movie's trying to represent. But I don't think I will go that far in saying that because I think the movie does it does do well with like its sexual tension for like what it's trying to get at. And I think it makes a lot more sense to go with the route that it did rather than really go into more like sex scenes. So um, that was just a debate I was having leading up to this review, but I think I'm fine with the movie how it explored uh, sex. So yeah.
That's an interesting take. This movie is so sexual. It's insane. The whole movie, you're sitting there like, are they gonna kiss? I think they're gonna kiss. Are
Yeah,
they gonna
that's
make
what I
love
ended up
tonight?
liking about the movie. I like that it was built up like that rather than
Um,
like showing a lot more. So that's why I'm fine with it.
yeah. For my negatives, I'm gonna start with this. It's not actually a negative because at the end of the day I don't care, but it is very
Sure.
funny to me that film cinephiles who will roast a movie like a bad action movie, let's say for bad product placement, won't. I haven't heard a comment on it. There are two blatantly funny product placements in this movie that I think is hysterical. There's a Coca-Cola and a Dunkin' Donuts one that is just so funny. There's obviously stuff like Adidas or Nike or things like that, but that makes a little bit more sense narratively. But I'm pretty sure this
Sure.
was produced by Amazon. What are we doing here, Jeff? You cutting corners over there, Paul? What are we doing here? They were so
You need Dunkin'
blatant.
Donut help?
I laughed in the theater. I was like, "This is like a Man of Steel level product placement shot. What are we doing here?" Hey, get your bag. That's all I'm saying. Get the bag. It's not really a negative. A couple of my negatives. I disagree with Kyle. Your point. The pacing is the only issue. The movie does feel longer than 2 hours, and if you're going to tell a story in the way it did, it cuts a lot through different time frames of what's happening. And when you do that, that's what's just kind of naturally going to happen. And so I think if there is a weakness, it is the pacing. And there is a point, I think, where most audience members go, "What time is it?" And they just peek at their watch. There was a point I felt to myself, I wonder how much longer we have left in this movie, because I was, and that is where the negative is. Does it mean I have a deep hatred of the pacing? No, I'm saying there is a point, I think, in this movie where you feel that because it'll slow down. We're bouncing around a lot. And then there are a couple of shots I didn't like. There are a couple POVs I thought were excellent. And there were a couple POVs I thought were horrible. I thought they were bad filmmaking, to be honest. Especially during the final tennis match, they do a lot of different things with GoPros and stuff. And some of it I was like, I'm looking at like a TikTok of a cat who is wearing a GoPro right now, and I'm just not enjoying it. And then sometimes I was like, this is what I wish sport anime would do. And sometimes they do. Like, this is exactly what it is. And I've seen a lot of people say it's a sport anime, and I would challenge them to watch a little bit more sport anime. I think this has flavor. I think it's got elements of it and inspiration. But to go so far as to say this is live action sports anime, this is the closest we've gotten, but I think you can get even further.
Do you mind if I add one more negative?
Sure.
It did remind me of it. I think after a while, the bouncing back and forth between time periods, or not time periods, but just bouncing back and forth through like the timeline of the movie, got a little out of hand. Like there was moments where it felt like it was kind of getting lost in like what time frame of the movie you're supposed to be in, because it wouldn't just like cut back and forth between like 10 years ago versus now. It would cut back and forth to like 8 hours ago, and then all of a sudden it would cut back to the next day, and then 20 minutes ago or something like that. And I feel like that can get frustrating for audiences to a certain point. I was okay with it, but I could see audiences after a while just kind of getting almost like whiplash and going back and forth with so much of the jumping to where after a while it can get kind of old doing it that way. But yeah, you just remind me of that I want to mention.
I think
for myself, but depends on the audience member, I would say.
I would agree with you, but I think it's right at the beginning of the third act you start to feel the jumping is starting to not, it's starting to get loose. And then I think at the end of the film, they end up kind of tying it together a little bit better with the jumping around.
It works out.
But I think that's also the point in the movie where you go, I wonder how long we have left in this movie.
Yeah.
I will also add, and this again, so I'm going to bring it up because it's a point I thought of in the movie, but I don't know if I would classify it technically as a negative, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really change my experience or view of the movie at all. But they really did not even attempt to make the boys look any different at any point in the movie. When they're old, you're insane. They barely did anything for Zendaya alone. You're insane, Kyle. That's
the way
nutty.
The way
put
they
a
dress,
backwards hat.
The way they present themselves.
Backwards hat.
Their
They
body
didn't
language did a
do
lot of the work. The body language. It was the
your
body language.
body language has nothing to do with
It
your
does.
age that you look.
It does. It does.
What?
Come on.
Kyle, you're insane.
No, I disagree.
This is an
I
insane
disagree.
debate. All right, well, let me
No.
finish my freaking
Go
point
ahead,
instead
go
of
ahead.
yelling at me. Whatever Kyle thinks, I think when they were trying to be high school kids, they just didn't even attempt to do anything. They threw Zendaya in a prom dress, and they're like, you look high school. They say we're high school. We're going to college. Great.
Mhm.
And yes, I mean, you can say the guys, most guys, when they're usually seniors, tend to start looking older. But still, I was like, these guys, I could easily walk up and be like, are you 23? And they wouldn't be surprised if they said yes. And then when they switched to the older years, they also don't do anything. They put a backwards hat on one of the boys, Mike's character, when he's young, and then he doesn't play tennis with a backwards hat when he's older, and that's it.
15, folks.
And Zendaya gets a hairdo. But see, this is my point. It doesn't change the narrative because I don't think the production cared. I don't think they actually put in a time or effort or cared. I think they were like, we'll just do this. It'll be fine. It's not a big deal. This isn't, we're just going to say they're in high school. Audiences aren't going to really care. And I didn't. But Kyle is insane over here. So
No, I'm just right.
what did they do? Explain that to me then. We'll even say spoilers here just in case. But what do they do that shows that they're adults? That they're like in their 20s, because I'm not talking about acting sexually. Kids act like teenagers act sexually all the time. So what with their body language makes them look like they're kids compared to adults? They were slouched in the chair at one point in the at the party scene, and then they're not in the slouching in chairs.
I thought just the way that they would like walk around, or the way that they would like, I don't know, talk to each other face to face. Like there is a difference between like, I would say teenagers like acting a little bit loose and not caring about like how they present themselves like body language wise, versus like an adult that presents himself maybe a bit more professionally at times, or just maybe just in the way that they have like a look of like adult tiredness on them. I kind of felt like I saw that through their facial expressions, while at the beginning you see them younger and they have like joy and
the tiredness
optimism.
The tiredness point I give you, but I also won't, because I think they make them look tired because there's a difference between making them look. They looked the age of a tennis player at that point to me.
Yeah.
They looked like they could be that age, and it was more like an athlete whose body can't keep up. That's the look they gave to me. I think them running around and chasing each other when they're younger in college and then not doing that, I don't know. I think that's just like I don't know. Maybe I guess maybe, but I'm just talking looks myself. I don't think look wise they ended up even really doing much, but
I don't know. I guess like the haircut still worked for me then. Just
I don't even think they got a haircut, to be honest. And I said that when I got out of the movie,
or wigs, or whatever the heck.
Autumn was like, no, one of them got a haircut, and I was like, clearly I didn't notice enough. Like it wasn't dominant enough for me to really care, but. Yeah. Anyway, guys, what do you think? Apparently, Kyle and I have a huge debate on ageism, even though it didn't matter to our actual viewpoints of the movie. I like the movie. Not one of my top favorites of the year, but so far. But I think it's competing for that top 10 spot at the moment. I'd have to really sit down and think, but probably up there. Hasn't been too crazy. But guys, what did you think? Comment below, let us know. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you, Moo patrons. Go get some merch. And as always, thanks for watching, Mom.
See you guys.